to show why what's going on in the SSPX is the most normal thing in the world. It would be almost surprising if it wasn't happening. We live in a crazy world in which everything normal is abnormal and everything abnormal is normal. So it's absolutely normal that there should be this abnormal collapse of the church. That's the world we live in. You may wonder why in a conference for family we should nevertheless be talking about these big questions, but I'm sure you very well realize that the society as a whole, the church as a whole, bears directly upon the family. And man is a social animal. He's not just a familial animal. There is the individual. One moment. Yes, that was. Yes, okay. She gives another 3. Yeah, that's correct. There's the individual, or the person, and then there's the family, and then there's the society. And the person normally comes into existence through a family, and if they don't come into existence through a family, they nevertheless come into existence through man and woman. And God obviously meant it to be part of the family that sticks together. So the person is designed to come through the family, and the family is designed to live in society, because the family is not designed to stand on its own, because the dad is not meant to be a cobbler and a saddler and a baker and a butcher. You'll have a village in which there's a baker and a butcher and a saddler, and then the group of families make the village. That's the most normal thing in the world. And therefore the family is not designed to stand on its own. The person is not designed to stand on his own. He's meant to live in the family. The drama of a huge number of persons today is that this individualism means they're living on their own, and they're meant to be living in a family. And it's tragic. Apparently at Christmas, the number of suicides increases. Does anybody know that? Yes. The number of suicides increases because at Christmas, all of these individuals living on their own realize that they haven't got family. And it hurts them most when at the feast of the family, which is probably Christmas. So the person is not meant to live on his own. People are not meant to be living on their own, like so many people today are. They're meant to be living in a family. And that's great, thank you. And you can say that the 3-decker family is better in itself, better than the 2-decker family. In other words, something about grandpa and grandma living with mum and dad and the children is more normal than just mum and dad and the children. And yet mum and dad and the children is today the norm, and then of course it's not even the norm today. It's ceasing to be the norm today, because the state takes the children, or the parents don't want any children. The whole thing is coming apart, and all of the influences that make the modern world are tearing the family apart. So the family is meant to be part of society for the reasons given. So what you've got today, then the society. The person and the family are meant to form part of a society. And it's actually the society which, believe it or not, is in a way the most important. Because the society has this huge effect upon the family and upon the person. The 3 are stacked like that, and there's influences going from 1 to 2, 1 to 3, 2 to 3, 3 to 2, 3 to 1, 2 to 1. There are all kinds. It's a constant interplay. Today, the liberalism has made the person much too individual, much too isolated, and today the state is there's nothing in between the state, the society, and the person. The family is being wiped out. So, how the society is, the society of the world or the society of the church, has a great part to play in the family. What is happening in the society, what is happening in the church? Well, I use the following, what's happening today. I use the following schema to illustrate, which some of you already certainly know. Let's suppose that here is the church of the Middle Ages, which occupied the whole of Christendom, as it then was. The Middle Ages. And then comes Protestantism, which takes about a third of Christendom. And Protestantism swings off to the left, and you've got a great chunk of Christendom is broken off, and Protestantism is the beginning. Well, it didn't happen overnight. It was prepared by the decadence of the Middle Ages. The decadence of the Middle Ages broke out in Protestantism, just like the decadence of the Catholicism in the 1930s, 40s, 50s broke out in the Vatican II of the 1960s. These great, just like the Catholic Reformation, the Reformation in England was the product of centuries of infidelity in England. It isn't something that just happened overnight. So Protestantism is a tremendous and terrible error, and it grabs about one third of Christendom. Middle Ages is Christendom, as it then was. And the Catholic Church, so to speak, gets its act together. It pulls itself together, and we have what's known as the Counter-Reformation. I might put that in green, because these are the good guys are in green. The bad guys will be in red, if I have a red. Here's the Counter-Reformation. Green for go. And the Counter-Reformation takes place in the 16th century, and it is so successful that the church begins to expand again. For instance, I think it's in the church expands once more. In 1531, Henry VIII splits England from the church, but I think in 1531, Our Lady appears in Guadalupe and makes the tremendous conversion of Mexico happens, so that the New World replaces the New World compensates for the apostasy of the Old World. England falls away, Mexico steps up to the plate, and there are masses of conversions. That's the Counter-Reformation. So, and also, let's notice while we're there that the Counter-Reformation. It's all right. Wipe it properly afterwards. The Counter-Reformation is worked by a whole council. It was the Council of Trent that was that made the blueprint. It's a total council. In other words, all the bishops of the church, plus the Pope. The Counter-Reformation lasts for 250 years, and then comes the next disaster, which is the French Revolution. And that is liberalism is going to sweep off to the left. Liberty, equality, fraternity, Freemasonry. Let's put a date on it of 1789, the French Revolution. That, while the church has expanded again, the French Revolution will grab hold of the politics. From now on, the Christian state, the states, will hardly be, the norm from now on will be the ununion of state and church. The union of state and church is Catholic doctrine. Every state on the face of the earth ought to be united with the Catholic Church to work for the salvation of souls. The state is not meant to do what the church does. The church is not meant to be doing what the state does. A priest has better things to do than to be a politician. But church and state should work together. I'll give you a very simple little example of how church and state can and should work together. Take a little town. There is a couple are having a great fight, and they call the police. The police do not like being called in on a domestic fight, because often the policeman will knock on the door, and they will say, "I've come here, somebody called the police, and here I am." And then the wife, who called the police, instead of laying out her problems to the policeman, she then takes the side of her husband, and the two of them work on the policeman, which is why policemen don't like going in on a domestic fight, because you can never tell what the wife is going to do. They take the side of their husbands, which is good. But anyway, but in others, and the policeman will say he should bring up the local priest, and he will say, "Look, Father, there's this trouble down at that house. Could you possibly give them a call or go and visit?" Because the two of them won't bash the priest. They'll because the policeman is a man of force and violence. They will use violence on the policeman, but they won't use violence on the priest because therefore the policeman will wisely call the priest because it's his business to look after a domestic problem. Or he's much better equipped to deal with a domestic problem, On the other hand, let's assume that the priest has some unruly element in his church on Sunday who's interrupting the sermon. It's not the priest's business to go down there and smash it. It's not quite fitting. On the other hand, if he calls the local police on the cell phone, "Officer, could you come round and see this?" And the policeman comes there like a bruiser, and whoom, the person's removed. In other words, let the policeman do his work, the state. Let the church do its work, the priest. And the policeman and the priest can very well work together. And I'm sure I'm sure that's often how it has been, how it was, how it should be. Because it's each one doing what he does best, like American Airlines. And therefore, the union of church and state is the most normal and natural thing with the true church, not union of the church, not union of the state and a false church. Union of the state and the Catholic Church, which is the only true church. Therefore, the union of church and state. But with the French Revolution, it becomes normal for the state and the church, who should be working together, to be separated. And it's not good for the state, and it's not good for the church. The state thinks it's thrown off God, and it's much easier for the state to misbehave, and the church loses all the power of society to work on the family, to protect and work on the family and the person. One of the great Catholic thinkers in France in the 19th century said something which is basically depressing for us today. He said, the church, more or less, he said it in much more careful language and much more thoughtful language, but more or less, that if the church is not united with the state, its priests are pouring water into the sand.